It is time to make some vodka, and this batch is going to be based on Alan Bishop's brandy recipe. Let's get stuck in. How's it going, chasers? I hope you're having a kick-ass week. I'm Jesse, this is Still It, and we are making vodka today based on Alan Bishop's recipe for his quick brandy. Why do I want vodka? Well, I'm out. I'm plumb out of vodka, and the stuff is so freaking versatile. If you want to make gin, macerations, absinthe, anything like that, having a big old batch of vodka sitting there ready to rock makes chasing the craft easier. It lets you just sort of jump in, grab something, mix it in with botanicals or fruit or whatever it happens to be, and get stuck straight into making something cool. So, with that said, let's make some vodka. I'm making a 100-litre batch today, and the first thing we need is 40 to 50 litres of relatively hot water. Luckily, with brewing supplies around, that's easy. So 40 litres of hot water goes into my fermenter, followed by 18 kilograms of sugar. Now, I'm going to push this a little bit further than normal. Generally, I like to have sugar washes sitting at the 9–10% range. I'm going to put this up to more like 11.5%. So I'm aiming for 1075 as a specific gravity. 18 kilos of sugar in 100 litres total volume should get us there. Next up, 1.5 kilos of rolled oats. This is going to help us get a little bit of that kind of creamy, voluptuous, velvety mouthfeel and a little bit of oaty flavour, followed by 1.5 kilos of rolled wheat. This is going to add a nice wheaty softness and once again a little bit of grain-ish flavour on the back end. We also need 1.5 kilograms of raisins. The last time I tried this, it was a bit of a nightmare processing them. So I'm taking your advice and putting them through the food processor to make sure they're all blitzed up and the flavour can get into the wash nicely. Those raisins are going to add an interesting fruity lightness on the brandy side of things into the vodka, and I have every faith that that is actually going to carry through into the final product. Give it a really good stir to make sure all of the sugar is dissolved, and now we can add in water up to our total volume, which is 100 litres. I'm aiming for 36 degrees Celsius as a fermentation temperature today, so add in hot water or cold water as you need to get to 100 litres and 36 degrees Celsius. You may have noticed a couple of things. 1, 36°C is relatively warm for a ferment, and 2, like I said earlier, we're bumping up the specific gravity at the beginning of this fermentation, and that is because this video is sponsored by Angel Red Lable. This stuff will ferment all the way up to, I think it's 42 degrees Celsius, which is pretty freaking bonkers if you want a really quick fermentation. And they advertise this going up to 17% ABV. We're not going to push either of those things too far today. 11.5% is respectable, but not crazy. 36 degrees Celsius is pretty freaking warm, so expect a relatively quick ferment out of this. We're keeping things in the middle of the range for the Angel Red Lable, being really nice to our yeast while pushing things compared to what other yeasts will do. Pitching rate for the Angel Red Lable is also relatively low, so we're going to go with 30 grams of yeast for the total 100-litre batch. 4 hours later and the fermenter is bubbling away quite nicely. 4 days later and it's fermented out dry, ready for our stripping runs. I'm using the Dr. Gratis pot with a false bottom for distillation, so I don't have to worry about a few sultanas getting in there. And a day and a bit after primary fermentation is finished, honestly, most of those sultanas will fall into the bottom anyway. Being a sugar wash, I'm not too worried about puking or boil overs. So after running the still for 10 minutes, I can crank the power up to the full 4 kilowatts going into this pot to get the stripping runs done nice and quickly. With the first one finished, it's time to drain everything out the bottom of the pot, fill it up with more wash, and run a second stripping run. With roughly 90 litres of wash processed in 2 stripping runs, all of the low wines are collected and put into the little T500 boiler. I'm going to be using the T500 reflux setup to run this through. I'm not too stressed about getting it up to a crazy high ABV. 92–93% is going to be just fine for what I'm after here, because there is a lot of delicious flavour in this wash, and a little bit of that carrying through is going to be a good thing. Up to temperature and collecting first drips, I tend to run the reflux on the T500 with full power going into the pot and then dealing with the offtake speed primarily or almost entirely with the amount of water going through the reflux condenser. I have collected quote unquote 4 shots thusly. Those are out of the way. This much heads, and I'm now about halfway through this jar here into heads as well. And we are starting. Oh yeah, we're definitely cleaning up. Yep, I need another jar. Hold on. I'm not 100% sure. I'm sitting at about 95% sure that I'm actually going to call this just straight hearts into this jar because that's really clean now. But I'll collect maybe, you know, another 100, 150 mils, make the assessment again, decide whether or not it's cleaned up even further, and then react accordingly. 4 shots are going into the firelighter jar. The heads, generally I don't collect a whole lot of faints for neutral runs. I don't do a whole lot of neutral runs, and I think the returns on collecting it is a whole lot lower with a reflux run than it is with, you know, double pot distillation. But the heads on this are actually quite pleasant, so I think these are in fact going to go into the faints jar. Roughly a little under 9 hours after turning the power on the still on this morning, the run is done, and I have finally found definite tails here. Almost certain, yeah, that's nasty as well. I have all of the hearts I've kept here, and this is the only borderline glass. When I checked it, I instantly thought there's something up with that. I switched it out, but I think I left it just a little bit too long. Let's give it one more go. One last chance. Taste next to this. It's actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But you know what? There's no point messing things up for that. So I'm just going to leave all of that out. I've already collected it. I may as well stick it into faints. This is my hearts. I am going to be super freaking lazy this time and just tip some water in here. The plan is to proof this down to 50% ABV. That is about half of what I think I need. I'm going to take it easy because I don't want to overproof it. I want to keep this at about 50% because almost certainly I end up using neutral vodka, whatever you want to call it, as recipe ingredient. It's an ingredient to me, not a spirit to drink. For gin, for macerations, for whatever it happens to be, freaking absinthe or something. That's almost always how I use it, and I tend to want it at around about 50%. I don't really care, honestly, exactly what the percentage is. Let me grab my little Hoosier, hold on. So I'm hoping this says around about 65, 70%. Let's find out though. Boom, there we go, 65%. The eyeballs. The eyeballs on form today, folks. 51.2, and I just used my last drop of water that I eyeballed, so I'm going to call that good. We'll call it 51% ABV. I'll get this packaged up and put away. We'll let it sit for 2 or 3 days, and then I'll come back and do a taste test for you. Let you know what I think of the stuff. Our vodka has been sitting for 4 days after being proofed down, so it's had a little bit of time to mellow out from the shock of proofing. It's time to give it the old sniff test and taste test, but first I need to say a huge thank you to the Patreons. Thank you so much, Patreons, for being the people that support us day in, month out. We thoroughly appreciate your support and your interaction on the Patreon platform, for giving us dope ideas, and generally being a bunch of awesome humans. Anyway, let's get stuck into tasting this, shall we? So, up front, on the nose, this is very, very clean. I can smell almost nothing, but there is a slight hint of fruitiness coming through from the raisins, which is really pleasant, actually. And when you taste it, when it first hits your mouth, when you first coat your tongue, you get that fruity, it's not dissimilar to brandy kind of flavor in your mouth. And then as you swallow and as it dries out, the grainy, like real subtle grain flavor takes over, which is very, very pleasant. The other thing that's awesome about this is the big, voluptuous, silky mouthfeel, which you often don't get in sugar washes. And for all of those reasons combined, this is probably one of the better vodkas I've made, honestly. I think I may have gone just a touch too far into tails. There's just a hint of that slight, is it there? Am I being overcritical? Yeah, I think maybe I went like just a touch too far into tails. There's that slight, almost cement-like quality of reflux tails in it, like buried way down there, kind of playing with the grain. I don't know. That's on me for either being overcritical of what I've made or for just pushing the distillation slightly too far. I'll have a think about that over the next sort of 2 or 3 weeks as I taste it again in the future. It could be still slightly needing to calm down from proofing. Give it another week and that might fade out. It's such a tiny little presence in the back of what is a really nice vodka. I'm not that worried about it. And to be honest, I'm going to redistill this for pretty much anything that I use it for. Specifically, honestly, most of it will be turned into gin. And that'll probably clean that up as well. So this one's pretty good, guys. So if you're gonna try a new vodka recipe, I would thoroughly suggest giving this one a nudge because it's turned out great. So thanks again, Alan, for being the inspiration for this. I'll put a link down there to One Piece at a Time Distilling. You can catch up on everything that Alan's doing because it's pretty freaking dope. And I'll catch you next time. Keep on chasing the craft, guys. See ya.